Horror reflects society. Young women in the horror genre have come to be known as scream queens and offer a reflection of how society depicts womanhood and femininity. Early female characters in horror films are depicted as the damsel in distress. These young women are often portrayed as beautiful, helpless, and defenseless. The shift from the damsel in distress in the first half of the 1900s to the 1960s and 1970s created the trope of the final girl. With the rise of slasher films, most horror movies end with one person facing off the villain, and this is usually the final girl. If it is Sidney Prescott in 1996's Scream, or Laurie Strode in 1978's Halloween, even Sally Hardesty in 1979's Texas Chainsaw Massacre. She plays the role of virgin, tomboy, girl next door. She typically witnesses the death of her friends and family while eluding the male villain. Not every surviving girl is a final girl, but every final girl survives. Carol J. Clover. Coined by Carol J. Clover in 1989, the final girl has been a staple of horror for the past 60 plus years. Clover argues that the horror genre is informed by the viewing of gender and sex, two sex or two flesh model, that male and female bodies are inherently different, and thereby inform the gender of the person inhabiting the body, and that the one sex in question was essentially male, women being inverted and less perfect men. The world of horror is in any case one that knows very well that men and women are profoundly different, and that the former are vastly superior to the latter, but one that at the same time repeatedly contemplates mutations and slidings whereby women begin to look like men, slasher films, and men are pressured to become like women, possession films, and some people are impossible to tell apart. However, the one gender model, is also echoed in the horror film representation of the gender as definitive category from which sex proceeds as an effect, and in its deep interest in precisely such proceedings. The final girl needs to have characteristics that are both male and female. The cunning and clever strategic thinking with the expression of crying, screaming, and begging. This allows both the male and female audiences to relate to the final girl. Along with the final girl's name being androgynous, she dresses more conservatively as well, othering her from the other female characters and aligning herself with the male characters. Or filming. The film's sectioning, violence, and backstory influence the depiction of the characters. Slasher films usually have the first act's perspective from the villains, where the final girl is scared, reveling in her femininity. Then the film shifts to the perspective of the final girls, as she actively seeks out to end the villain, surviving because she adopts her masculinity. Through penetrating the male villain with a phallic object, she strips away his maleness. Then she finally drops her weapon to regain her femininity. The villain is usually masculine, one who possesses superhuman abilities and violently gorges the female characters. Slasher films have very graphic depictions of their female characters dying, while the male characters are often killed off screen. The eroticism of female torture depicts the male violence and female victimhood in horror films. Additionally, the final girl ties sexuality to mortality. The absence of sex relates to moral high ground and purity, conforming to the conventions of female behavior by rewarding the final girl with surviving while punishing girls who engage with sexual activity with a gruesome death. These female characters are implied to have deserved their death because of their meanness, stupidity, or promiscuity. The death by sex trope. Over the decades, specifically starting in the 1990s and 2000s, the final girl shifts from being virginal to being sexually active, untying the connection of her sexual history to her ability to survive. Now in the 2010s and 2020s, she can even be morally ambiguous. The trope also shifts this archetype from a girl who survives the violence of a male villain, but thrives in the end despite the graphic and psychological torture she goes through. All final girls experience suffering of some kind, either psychological or physical, which raises the question, is she a symbol of female empowerment or a victim of regressive attitudes? Additionally, because of the lack of diversity in film and media, the characters that play final girls are white women. Black women and women of color have not been the final girl, but act as the supporting character that often does not make it. The archetype of the final girl reinforces white victimhood through the vulnerable yet morally superior and worth-saving female characters. The final boy. With the creation of the final girl trope comes the final boy, such as Ash from Evil Dead and Chris from Get Out, Jesse from Nightmare on Elm Street, earning the respect of the male audience through the transformative violence of the film. He must be emotional, directly opposing the traditional masculine features and suffering through the brutality of the villain. While the final girl is usually a teenager, the final boy has a wide range of ages, but has significantly less media attention and analysis. The Final Girl. With my interest in horror and current state in my women and gender studies class, I had a lot of fun researching the topic. Here are a couple of films that depict the final girl trope that I want to watch in the future.